Imagine one fine day someone comes and forcefully removes you from the comfort of your home and workspace that you and your family have been enjoying for generations. How would you feel? What will you do next? What will be your livelihood from now on? This is what the nomadic community in Tibet is experiencing under the duress of the so-called Poverty Alleviation program of the Chinese Communist Party. Tibetan nomads living in the yak wool tents on the pastures of the Tibetan plateau with a self-sufficient life, owning hundreds of herds on their ancestral land for generations, are today blamed for their lifestyle and put away in tight concrete houses in the plains with no job. Tibetan nomadic community is the #1 target of the CCP's policy of poverty alleviation program. Nomads in Tibet today are miserable, hopeless and oppressed. Let's talk more about this to get into in-depth situation right now in Tibet. On February 25, 2021, Chinese President Xi Jinping declared he had successfully removed extreme poverty in China, including Tibet, and said nearly 100 million people were lifted out of poverty. This big declaration is questionable by many experts around the world because of its flawed definition of poverty and unethical implementations of policies. Some say this is a big propaganda win with fake poverty data just before this year CCP hits its 100th year of tyranny.
Both the schemes in Xinjiang and Tibet employ military drill, closed military training management. There's a huge amount of pressure for the government to achieve these prescribed targets and quotas because these are poverty alleviation goals. And of course, we all know by the end of China was supposed to have eradicated poverty.
You know, the big picture is the problem that takes centuries to deal with, the problem of turning an empire into a nation state.
In order to improve their lifestyle and also improve their way of life, the Chinese authorities want the Tibetan nomads to be more materialistic, to work like the Chinese people, eat like Chinese people, and live like Chinese people. According to Chinese authorities, that can be achieved through re-education and also relocation of the Tibetan nomads from their ancestral land.
When we talk about various policies of the CCP implemented on the Tibetan people in Tibet, we are altogether talking about various other issues which are all interconnected due to the vast nature and impact. CCP's Poverty Alleviation program was initially started in early 2003, designed to relocate the independent Tibetan nomads from their homes on the high pastures and mountains to the concrete houses in the plains, a complete 180-degree change in their livelihood of thousands of years. You may wonder why.
인데기 CGD 락다 제비디 또 던다 조직 던다 인토리아 벤도 총송스라고 건조 지도 가르라고 선 CGD 라린 따르베 경기 아니 싱조 서울이야 안 땅게 첩시 경약 망시디 아니 예말레 땡도 친소 더 의도 가도 CG 직도 가르서는 계시 점블링 토리아 아니 의본디 매비체야 초부람을 도구고요나 아니 갸나기 따케라주 섭드들 빼대비나 디그레스 갸나나리아 미비된 도도 갸조응은 다 토제 토별 사주 미미 롱동 사절 대비 아니 도베 미디 아니 마 탕리아 뽀야디 자와라지 지기요래 강에도 가르쳐요래 러비나 버버디 아니 시주 디원에 아니 자와제 만두신도 도구고 유도 사지피게 레사리나 레세 사지들이야 직내 로망고 지 도고 매저 도고 초하게 아니 로버도 직 가르서래 안 탕을 말래요 메거리야 아니 초에 kumshime 강해지 아니 니네 가르스는 링내 주제 샴부인바 안 디나네 도고 망체 게이 싱마리 게이 로단 대외양 싱마리 게이 싱마 디데 인도 산엘 데오메 게게 아니 마음베 초아디 근데 제요메 돌이야 또 도고 망소리야 강해디 대기요래 딱 케빈 준비 리소르스 여버다 가르스 벤 도고 힘상 얘기를 하서 배비나 디나네 힘상 징이르버디 양직 지조고 날 조조에 첨버를 제 가르소로 롭중에 어즈 여버지 딘데 이년이나 아니 양 케빈 데스 벤조토리아 케빈 연구였다.
But from a Chinese point of view, all of the Drogpa are backward, ignorant, selfish, careless about the long-term consequences of their action, and above all poor. And that's why poverty alleviation was needed.
Unlike mainland China, CCP has designed this policy underlying gigantic political motives to legitimize their systemic rule and to maintain full control over Tibet. Hence, Tibetan nomads became an easy target for their harsh policy in the guise of poverty alleviation tag. Millions of Tibetan nomads were stripped of their ancestral lands, and large number of the animals they owned were taken away by the Chinese government agencies.
A particularly concerning aspect of the scheme is to promote a scheme by which local nomads and farmers are asked to hand over their land and herds to large-scale state-run cooperatives. Nomads become shareholders as they convert their usage rights into shares and become wage laborers.
디주상으로 촉좀지 채우고 촉좀디 근데서 채우고 그랬으나 아니 단대가 남주 되지 알레 계지기 쿠류기 내당게 디 카키 아니 개미기 슝접게 표 가와장기 신감 딜라 아니 점블링기 산에 그 제가 숨부인스 제가 숨부디기 쿠류 디기 뇌지 딜라 송겹 제고를 제상 디기 게게 조부 치모줘야 다디 고미기지 두브리.
What China plans to achieve from this policy is nationalisation. It is making Tibet into part of China, part of the Chinese economy, eventually as a meat supplier, as well as, above all else, a supplier of water.
가르스는 보야디나 니나가니리 리직디 보고 임바 보고 멤버스 라운 때죠 리직제 리직디 차상 보고도 차상 보고야디 답배 차샤빈데 디요레 단다 로고 총기 세그바 디나리아 광가 존리아 스부리스야 총조시도 디나리아 콘주 사제스테지 디포조도 청하고로 슝랑 덴베리 직제 다 직디 단도 뒨룬 대징 존나리아 구름 총대 아니 디 가종 총주 세시도 어디나리아 보주어 따딩에 더바네주 때베날 때비는 니돈 주국 진도 종니 나리아 너주 암도 존다 너주 촌이 존 니무 존네 김자 고병업 중업도 미장 챤의 셰동 겸이 응업 중업계지 심부리 총조리아 배열에 니돈 주국 날 배열에 따디네 여지 대비는 니돈 쪽제 더 주변 나리아 너주 총지 니무 존네 니무 존 로마르 샹스야 되네 투자 니제 조주리니다 미장 지역동 겨도 주민이 안데 뒨룬 대진기 단단히 쉬어하기 디 구름 총대 가종 총주세야 디나리아 니동 주도로리아 저버디게 배열에 따딘데 주도 콘주 단대 최시디도 내주团당 때대비나 다 너주 너리 시그즈신 로베스고 디게기 서구 다 총다가 대샤 총기시거를 너주 총기 너리 총기 시즈서구 디게기 아니 총기다 서구 숨기 종 이슈 탐번에 아니 상당 총대 또 총주 춘주인데 고주 고동기 상당 총대 고주 고동기 다 빌리지 서거와 총주 십정업주 밑이 조금 학듯이 디게리아 저거 저기요레스 제가 디게 디트네 미 범직 티주지직 아니 가르에서나 딱 차네 안 말홀이야 보야기 안 처시도 수요레 제디 콘주 이제나 퉁구도
Anya Center, a 47-year-old highly respected leader of the Kyangche township of Golok Amdo region, was arrested by the Chinese government on September 4, 2018 because he stood up for local people to fight corruption in his town. He criticized local officials for siphoning off and misusing public money, notably from relocated nomads, and ran campaigns against illegal mining activities and the hunting and poaching of endangered animals. Anya Senta was sentenced to 7 years in prison in 2019. Currently, his poor state of health remains a concern. In the weeks following his arrest, 9 other Tibetans from Golok were also detained and 8 have been sentenced. When we talk about the nomadic relocation, the environmental concerns and its impact on the pasture are core issues that arise. Take the cases of several new national parks established by the CCP for strategic purposes on the vast Tibetan lands over the last few years. Out of these national parks established in Tibet, the Sangjingyong National Park is the largest, covering 4 Tibetan autonomous prefectures and 21 counties in Kegudo, Golok, Malho, Tsolo, and Tangula town of Golmo city. China refers to the Sangjingyong area as Asia's water tower because it supplies 60 billion cubic meters of water to the lower-lying lands of the region. The nomads in Kyungchu County and Golok Prefecture abandoned their grassland user rights under a permanent grazing ban in exchange for each household to be given accommodation about 80,000 yuan and an additional annual subsidy of 8,000 yuan for 10 years. Although resettlement nomads receive annual subsidies from central and local governments, the amount is too meager to afford the necessities of life with no steady source of income and employment.
China is building national parks primarily in the watersheds where China's biggest rivers start, and after their source in the glaciers comes down, wandering across the vast pasture lands and spreading for at least 1,000 kilometers through the alpine meadows, and that has never been a problem. Tibetan Drogpa knew how to use and how to also prevent from becoming overused.
A research article by Aidan Zenz published in September last year describes the situation of the relocated Tibetan nomads in military-style labor camps as the strongest, most clear and targeted attack on the traditional Tibetan livelihood that we have seen almost since the Cultural Revolution.
A little bit similar to Xinjiang, we see a real racking up of the coercive nature of these vocational trainings and the labor transfer, becoming much more stringent, structured, militarized, mandatory, and top-down and coercive.
단대 디 미마 뽀야디 태가르디드 되어 연에 매네 간다 막종 때야디 아니 지당 독스테비나 디 개블로그 미유디 첩시라 임비주마도 아니 셴다 가르소레 미유 셴메브디 디나네 세버르비레샤.
Once the Tibetans are resettled in these relocation camps, they are subject to different surveillance systems like the grid management and the neighborhood policing and also collective policing.
So the Tibetans who are now being taken from the highlands from above 4,800 meters are now being rehoused, resettled in these strategic villages in southern Tibet, and according to the 14th five-year plan are to be trained as construction workers, because a lot of construction workers will be needed. They have no real power and will be required to move from one construction site to another and have no security and be employed by contractors and subcontractors to the contractors who exploit the labor of Tibetans.
안데 배우 강에 쪼디 초야게 줘야다 사야 통야게 베트네즈 말 쪼드 가르는 첩식이라고 해요 말.
There's significant cause for concern that these programs are bringing long-term changes in Tibetan lifestyles and livelihoods that are coercive and mandatory, non-optional, and accompanied by a profound loss of tradition, culture, spirituality, and a substantial increase in government control over their lives.
So what can you do to help? So with these development in Tibet and understanding what is happening in Xinjiang, we need to create plans and draw effective international support to put an end to these unjust and unethical Chinese governmental practices in Tibet. We need to mobilize powerful governments to take action and hold the Chinese government accountable.
당가 제모네 주규 당실퍼 장주 유상기 장주